The primary ways that they're looking at privacy is through zero knowledge or FHE or like layer twos that are fully private.
I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of headlines, kind of like the reverse, the opposite headlines we've been seeing like in 2018 about crypto institutions not touching it.
This material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide accounting, legal, or tax advice, or investment recommendations, or an official statement of Presto or its affiliates.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Presto Research Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Chung, head of research. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Nicholas.
Hello.
Yeah, and we have a very, very special guest today. They are the co-founders of Project Temple. Evan Varsamis and Dan Zimmerman. Hi, Evan and Dan.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. I've been really looking forward to do this because, full disclosure, we are an investor in Temple. And when we were doing the due diligence, we were, very impressed with the quality of the team. And, it was something that fits right into our investment thesis. So we wanted to do this episode to kind of highlight what you guys are doing and maybe share some of the excitement that we feel about your project with our audience. So, before we begin, maybe just as a way of a background, I'd like to ask you guys, your journey into crypto and also how you two met with each other, because you guys were involved in some other ventures previously. So can you just kind of, go over that for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Perhaps I can start with a quick intro. Hey, everyone. Evan here, founder and CEO of Temple Digital Group, serial entrepreneur based out of New York. Both Dan and I, we've been in crypto since 2015, 2016 or so. We met in 2021 and we started building the most advanced non-fungible infrastructure back in the day. So we've built proprietary central limit order books across 12, 13 different networks back in the day. And basically as of this past summer, we've been working head on Temple. Happy to share more about what Temple is, what we do, and how we got started.
Yeah. How about you, Dan? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I've been in this space since 2016, 2017, and I was on the protocol side. So thinking a lot about like protocol research and go-to-market and how you kind of expand internationally. This was even like pre-smart contracts. So I was working with a foundation at the time. And yeah, Evan and I were connected by a mutual friend. And we were thinking about kind of how markets would become institutional over time. And we were very, very early to that thesis, and we were focused on one kind of niche area of the space. And then earlier last year, we were invited by some of our partners to start building on Canton, and we saw that there was just a great opportunity. I remember the Canton team from Daml, their work back in the day. So it immediately clicked for me what Canton was and what they were trying to do. So we immediately started building and now we're here.
Great. So neither of you actually have a Wall Street background, it sounds like. Or was there some Wall Street exposure previously, or not at all?
On my side, I worked in RegTech. So I used to build way before crypto. I worked on some municipal and corporate bond applications, and I rebuilt a relatively large model risk management system for one of the large banks like post Basel III. So I had quite a bit of experience in banking tech before Temple and even before my work in the blockchain space.
Got it. So yeah, so let's now get into what Temple does. Tell us about the mission behind Temple and what it is that you're trying to build in capital markets.
Yeah, we can both answer that, I guess. But basically the story with Canton started early 2025. We've read basically the thesis of Canton and started doing a deep dive on Daml, and both of us fell in love with the ecosystem, also realized how early it was back in the day. And we started essentially building the trading infrastructure because of the architecture of the network and how Demo is structured with permissioned, basically, environments. You can create kind of very unique trading infrastructure. And we've started with our flagship product, which is a central limit order book. There's many other product lines that we're working on. But what excited personally me the most is the fact that Canton has the potential, and I think that it's proving that even today, just a few months basically after we bumped into it, Canton has the potential of bringing capital markets on chain, and you already see that with like the trillions of dollars worth of volume that they're doing, mostly around repo at the moment. But I think that they're focusing on just 2 or 3 key areas that are extremely important to institutions and capital markets in general, which is essentially collateral mobility in 24/7 markets. And on top of all of that, due to how Demo is structured and how the blockchain is structured, there's privacy and there's like 100% compliance on the applications that you're building. There's like minimal, if not zero, counterparty risk when you're trading. So we kind of connected the dots a couple months after we first got introduced to the blockchain, and we felt extremely excited about building some of the trading rails for not just crypto on Canton, but most importantly, bringing capital markets and eventually securities and additional assets as we go.
Yeah, and I think one of our visions, so we wrote a paper called like the Open Institutional Network. And our theory is that Canton is the first network of public and private networks. And if you've been following the private networks of the past, like the hyperledgers, back then it didn't really work because a lot of the hyperledgers weren't connected, right? So they were kind of in their own universe. You would spin them up, and then you couldn't really take full advantage of all of the aspects of an open blockchain network like Ethereum at the time. What's very cool about Canton is that you can, every time a new bank or a new financial institution deploys onto Canton, they're rebuilding the like international monetary system or the capital market supply chain, one block after the other. So with Temple, we're the first application on their open network, they're calling it. So like the global synchronizer. And just like Evan said, I think that the vision for us, this idea that, Canton becoming very open and public over time and having more applications, having more users, having a lot of liquidity like any other network, but then having the capabilities and the requirements that a lot of the other networks don't have, like privacy and compliance. And if you talk to the founders of Digital Asset or Canton Foundation, they make a very clear distinction between some of the cryptographic privacy, like the zero knowledge privacy that's being offered on other networks, versus how they've developed it at the application level, at the transaction level with DAML.
Right. So all these features that you just mentioned of a Canton network, is this something that you cannot replicate when you are building on other types of public L1 with add-on privacy features?
Well, I think, so when it comes to today, like the primary ways that they're looking at privacy is through zero knowledge or FHE, fully homomorphic encryption, or like layer 2s that are fully private. So I think there are some models that are trying to be extended. And from what we've seen, when an institution is looking for a network, they need like an additional level, what would you call it? Like a more granular type of privacy. So, they need to know that when a transaction is taking place, that they know who their KYC like counterparties are or their KYB counterparties. Right now, like in Ethereum today or Solana, at the transaction level, you can't trust that you know who your counterparty is in a private way. So that's like something they've embedded into the Canton network, is that you don't need to know who your counterparty is, but you know that the transaction is private, which is it's a non-trivial thing to pull off.
Right. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that point on privacy is quite important, because I think a lot of institutions they're all coming on board recently, and they're looking at all the chains that's available to them. I think Canton is positioned quite uniquely in that space. So maybe based on your experience and what you've seen so far in the ecosystem, what what are the institutions specifically finding the most important that they can do given this programmable privacy that is so special to Canton?
Yeah, I can take that. I think that's by far one of the most crucial parts, because I don't think that there's a single institution that would want to have people follow their wallet, right? Especially when it comes down to transacting securities. Imagine having the ability to go on Ethereum and just keep tracking Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan's wallet that they've sold $1 billion worth of that asset, or they purchased another $1 billion worth of another asset. I don't think anyone wants that. And I think it's pretty crucial. And I think that the way Canton is built, they have that deep into their core from the demo side, but also most importantly, from the builder side. As we started building the first central limit order book on Canton, it was quite challenging because we were coming from DeFi and EVM environments. The architecture and the logic is completely different. Everything is permissioned, not permissionless, meaning that for every step of the way that you're writing on a demo contract, you have to define the permissions, you have to request permissions. And that's kind of fascinating, to be honest with you, because that's exactly the type of infrastructure we needed for institutions to come on chain and, get to the point at which we have 24/7 markets, essentially.
Yeah, I think beyond that as well, not just the chain or the product being well built and well suited, but I think Canton's ecosystem has been very well built as well, as we're seeing just even in the recent few weeks. How do you think Canton was able to differentiate itself in building such a robust ecosystem with so many major players and trading firms and institutions all coming in?
Yeah, I think they kind of started in a pretty novel way, right? Many of the open chains built in a very specific built very specific functionality, and then went to industry. And I think Canton from day one has kind of done it opposite. Right. So they had industry sit with them at the table while they were building out these features, explaining to them very closely how to deploy onto the network. And then I think slowly bring them on as stakeholders. So a lot of the major builders are actually super validators. They're supporting the network. They're growing the super validator and the validator set over time. And it's made up of these institutional clients and these larger application builders.
And I think moving forward as well, beyond maybe just like these financial institutions, who do you think Canton would be expanding to beyond just like the finance, right? Then what other applications or what other kind of institutions beyond that do you think they'll be reaching out to?
I don't know what Evan thinks, but DAML's a very durable all-purpose language, right? So you can build anything with it. So I think that they're starting with financial applications and financial instruments, things that they know to be needed or requested by their users. And then I think you're going to move into more agnostic infrastructure like vaults. So, right, like every team right now is exploring institutional vaults because they see it as a very powerful primitive to move assets on chain. But then after that, there's probably a world where things outside of kind of traditionally financial, like it could be supply chain, it could be like DeFi that's non-institutional. Like I think that they're going to expand and support more types of companies and services. I think that's just inevitable. I think there's going to be a need for it. I think there's going to be a demand for it. And then yeah, I think they're just going to be easily interoperable with the like underlying financial services that are available after that first wave.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's a good segue as well to what Temple is trying to build and its role in the ecosystem. So you guys have mentioned it's a CLOB first. Maybe tell us more about how that product looks like, and beyond that, what you guys are aiming for.
Yeah, so we've built a hybrid central limit order book. Essentially, we're using sub-second off-chain matching with on-chain atomic settlement, essentially DVP. And the reason that it's kind of hybrid, it's not a centralized exchange, it's not a full decentralized exchange. We KYC, KYB essentially our user base, which basically creates this kind of unique environment for institutions to be able to trade with retail, starting obviously with spot trading and crypto assets like Canton Coin, USDC. We were also one of the first few applications at Canton Network to integrate Circle's Reserve X stablecoin infrastructure. And we are working on eventually adding additional assets, but more importantly, securities on the platform. And that's part of the reason that we're KYCing and creating different levels of essentially users. So CLOB, we consider it as our flagship product. That said, we're also working on another more permissionless, let's just say, trading product, which is an AMM for Canton that allows any user to essentially create a pool with a specific pair and make that available more widely across the ecosystem. And then we've been also working on an RFS RFQ dark pool product, which is more focused towards institutions, essentially capitalizing on, the privacy and architecture of Temple and creating markets specifically for institutions.
Yeah, and there's a cool feature we're calling like programmatic compliance, where by using Temple and by using Canton settlement layer, once we know what is required in each jurisdiction, we can then very easily white label assets and route them for like specific like distribution sets. So if in Korea they want American assets, we can just set it up in a very easy compliant way that supports both of their compliance regimens across those jurisdictions. So we want to build that up for all of the countries that we're deploying to.
Right. And this is something that Canton specifically allows you to do, right? Given the way the chain is built.
That's right. And I think also just their focus on, like Evan said, their focus on like KYC, KYB creates this hybrid environment where you can interface with traditional financial actors and support both securities and non-security digital assets in the same environment. I think that's a pretty novel attribute.
Yeah, and I know beyond the CLOB as well, you guys are thinking of like an SDK product that sits in the ecosystem and helps onboard new institutions, new players, connecting Web 2 and Web 3 as well. So maybe tell us more about your plans in the ecosystem side.
Yeah, so that's called Temple Connect. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do this is that we found that we're so early in the stack, and we even, part of our development work was helping some of the core infra as we were building our own product. It just made a lot of sense that, the application builders that come after us, they're probably not going to all be looking for complex trading infrastructure or all the APIs that go along with it. So if they want to develop something like a neobank or something that needs to connect to Liquidity or like a lending platform, being able to either build on top of Temple or integrate into Temple for a very seamless development experience is a powerful combination. So we're talking to most of the major builders on Canton and seeing how we can integrate or work with them. But then there's kind of a separate, larger thesis that we have, which is that Canton becomes this canonical environment for capital markets, right? So what does that mean? That means that there's a world where other blockchains and other startups on blockchains may decide that if they have a financial services or product, they might not want to go to a legacy system that's 50, 100 years old. They might just want to access the assets that are on Canton or access the services that are on Canton. So, with some of these newer like post-bridging technologies where it's easier to connect with other chains, we see a world where Temple Connect and some of these other solutions that we're offering might make it very easy to connect with the assets on Canton. If you're, let's say, like a consumer application on Base, or if you are looking to bring RWAs onto something in Binance Chain, for example. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
I think touching on that point as well, and maybe just not just on the tech, but beyond that, in terms of like the landscape, how the landscape has shifted in the past 12 to 24 months. How do you think that has helped you guys make this attempt viable now and serve as kind of a tailwind for everything that you're building?
You mean from a regulatory environment perspective?
He just means like
just in general, like how has the landscape shifted?
I would definitely lead with a regulatory environment because with this administration in the U.S., at least domestically, there's been major developments that essentially what that means is that U.S. can be eventually competitive when it comes down to blockchain adoption and how capital markets and everyone essentially transitions to a blockchain model, right? And there's no more T plus 2 essentially, right? And I think that all of that is, works in our favor, works in the favor of the builders of Canton. and the entire market as a whole. The whole world is watching and is paying attention to what this administration will be announcing within the next couple months, which sounds like it's going to be even more favorable guidance and clarity around crypto and blockchain in general. And I think that, the consensus right now from what I'm hearing in the industry is that everything is basically moving forward way faster than anticipated, like let's say a year or two ago, which is a net positive for the space.
I would actually, I'd take the other side of that. I do think that the regulatory environment has something to do with it. I would actually say that some of the underpinning interoperability tech makes this a little more viable. I think that a couple of years ago, if you were building out a private network, it was probably difficult, like as a bank or as an institution, it was probably difficult or we know it was difficult to connect with the rest of the market. Right. So you would constantly hear your competitors, or you'd read online, like, I know we're building this thing, but everything's happening on Ethereum, or everything's happening on Solana, or everything would be happening on another chain. And I think the cool, unique thing now is that with some of these new bridging technologies, and we reference something called like zero knowledge, or even just like succinct proofs, there's now a world where you can connect and bridge these worlds so that it doesn't feel like they're on an island. And even, like Evan mentioned, we're launching, when we launch later today, we're going to be launching with a bridge on day one. And I don't think that would have been possible a couple of years ago. So I think that creates an appetite, that creates an interest that if I'm really picking one network for my activities, I know that that my work can expand outside of any one ecosystem and connect other ecosystems through that.
Yeah, I just want to kind of go back to what Evan was saying about on the regulatory side and all these announcements that kind of people are maybe waiting for. I think there's been some talks about exemption letter or no action letter from SEC on, I guess, what the TradFi companies can do in the DeFi space. Are you guys hearing any specific kind of points or chatters about like exactly what type of exemption letter that people are talking about?
No, we're not hearing chatters, but it seems like it's a less adversarial environment. So it's not what is it called, like regulation or legislation through like lawfare, right? So I think that at least in the States, there's a more openness and willingness to experiment, work with our legal teams, and then try the best direction, rather than fear that anything we do could be up for potentially being sued or having like very intense legal consequences just because it was unclear in the environment what was considered okay or appropriate to do.
Got it. And then also another thing that kind of you mentioned earlier in your conversation, I think you used like the Korea as an example of a market that may be interested in accessing, U.S. equities, for instance, through a blockchain network. And it's interesting you mentioned it because I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, and last week of December, the Mirae Asset Securities, which is the largest brokerage house in Korea, announced the acquisition of oldest crypto exchange in that country, Corbett. So I think a lot of people are taking that as a sign that, the largest brokerage house in Korea is actually getting more serious about providing, tokenized equity services for their customers. And, I'm thinking maybe that's one example where, they can potentially integrate with the Canton network and then engage in asset trading through Temple. And I think there could be a perfect fit for that. So, it was a very good example. I think I don't know if you mentioned the Korean as an example because you knew about that or just kind of it was random mention.
A lot of our partners have been telling us that that there's just a lot of interest in international and US based equities and companies in Korea, and it also sounds like there's active conversations of there's like some new legal frameworks that are being built out in Korea, right? Specifically for digital assets. I think they're like going through the process now. So it's perfect timing. And once we launch and then we have some time, our plan is to dedicate more resources into Korea, especially again, given this idea that just this interoperability between our infrastructure and then just regionally deploying assets anywhere.
Great. And then, so Nick, you want to get into the next question on the list?
Oh yeah, I think going back to the product as well. So looking at in terms of the users that you guys are going for. So what kind of users would you be targeting first with the initial product launch, and then how does this change over the longer term?
I think we're targeting everyone. We're especially with a central limit order book. I think that the goal is that we want to have a global user base. It's not US only or just retail or just institutions. It's pretty much everyone. And that's why we took our time, just a few months in reality, to create a scalable infrastructure on our end for the club, because eventually we're going to be supporting securities, all types of asset classes, from commodities, private equity, secondary markets. There's like a vault strategy as well that we've been discussing. And it's a lot of sub products, subcategories. And we're trying to fit majority of those under the flagship product. So I would just say everyone for now. And what I've mentioned earlier is stand by it, the fact that we think that we're creating one of the first, perhaps, trading environments that has privacy, compliance, and also basically allows institutions to interact with like retail liquidity and vice versa. And all of that is built natively on the Canton network, which is, the most exciting part of it.
Yeah, look, I think that retail users are very hungry for these assets, and they're very hungry for these financial instruments. So, offering a really clean, easy experience for them is really important. But then to Evan's point, because we're neutral infrastructure on the network, we see a world where businesses might be building on top of us, institutions might be deploying their assets and using our order book. It's a tough question, right? Because mostly it's just one or the other. Usually you're a consumer brand, or usually you're just focused on like B2B or solely institutional. And I would say, yeah, to Evan's point, we've built our technology and our architectures in such a way that they can be applied in many different ways, either on the builder side or on the end user side.
Great. And so Temple is on the verge of its first, first public product release. What does that platform is going to look like at launch? And what are the other kind of upcoming milestones that we should be looking out for?
Yeah. So we have most of the basic functionality of a central limit order book, from timing force, essentially FOK, we're market orders, limit orders, full trade history. You can export your trade history for compliance reasons. We also, like I've mentioned earlier, integrated Circle's ReserveX bridge, so you can bridge from Ethereum USDC directly into the Canton ecosystem and vice versa. And some of the other things that we're working on top of the club are, adding functionality for TWAP, recurring buys, and essentially beefing up the interface in a way that feels essentially easier to use and has more advanced functionality over time. But we've been also working on the AMM product as well as of last month. So we're expecting to make quite a few announcements in the coming weeks. I think that part of our focus, aside of the features, is also adding more assets as we go. And we have an internal strategy on that we're going to be putting in motion as soon as we go live, which is happening today, by the way. But yeah.
Congrats.
Appreciate that.
I guess actually we're almost coming to the end of our conversation. So before we close off, any final thoughts on either on Temple or Canton Network, or just the broad crypto industry? Any maybe predictions for 2026, given that we are still in the first few weeks of January? Anything that you want to mention?
Yeah, I guess on my end, I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of headlines, kind of like the reverse, the opposite headlines we've been seeing like in 2017, 2018 about crypto and institutions not touching it. I think that collectively we've opened the floodgates for everyone to come on chain, and we're going to slowly start seeing that, whether that's a clearinghouse, whether that's a hedge fund, whether that's a bank, essentially, we're going to start seeing essentially a lot of those coming on chain in the next few months, perhaps a couple quarters. But I think that this transition has already started, and my personal take is that I'm expecting to see tens of trillions of dollars coming on chain, and I'm expecting that to happen through Canton. And going to be more excited for what we're building.
Right. Dan, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I would just say on the prediction side, let's see. I think that this idea of institutional applications is going to be a big focus. So anything that's had a kind of a consumer iteration or implementation in the past couple of years is going to be refocused to see, what do we do to repackage it in an institutional way? So again, the vault, right? The institutional vault, or maybe a bridge that has like an institutional focus. So I think we're going to see a lot of new, maybe not new technologies, but a lot of new, I think that institutions becoming more comfortable with cryptography is one of the big themes. So in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of experimentation with things like CKVMs or things that maybe were chasing a specific function or a specific use case. And now I think that since we've got these financial institutions coming on chain, they're going to look at them through the lens of like, how do we solve a specific problem or a specific solution? I think we're starting to see that today. And yeah, I think to Evan's point, I think the big thing that we're watching is whether institutions or when these institutions become more comfortable doing things on chain, like migrating from just having their own network to maybe trying out that institutional vault or trying out a DeFi primitive. So we're watching that very closely. And I think that's going to be one of the big themes is you're going to see, an announcement like, JP Morgan uses this app that 5 years ago, I don't think we would have ever thought they would have used, something like that.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, guys. This was it's been very informative and it's fun. If people want to find out more about Temple, where can they find the information?
Yeah, they can head over to templedigitalgroup.com on our website, or they can find us on X, temple_NY. Like we've discussed, like we're going to be going live later today. Expect quite a few announcements from us moving forward.
Great. All
Very
right.
nice.
Thank you very much, Ivan and Dan, and look forward to speaking with you soon again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for the time. Zero knowledge or FHE, fully homomorphic encryption, or like layer 2s that are fully private.
I think that we're going to be seeing a lot of headlines, kind of like the reverse, the opposite headlines we've been seeing like in 2018 about crypto institutions not touching it.